Hello and welcome to West Country Wanderings. Welcome to another one in my railway series. In fact, it's one of my lost railway walks. It doesn't look like it at the moment. I'm here at the seaside. Well, in fact, I'm at Weymouth railway station in the wonderful county of Dorset. And what we're looking at today is the railway line that once went from here to the island of Portland. It's quite a complicated story because Portland had 4 railways. We'll only be looking at just one of them, perhaps 2 of them later on in the video, but I'll explain to you as we make our way over and outside the station where the second one of those 2 and how it fits into the story. The story starts, in fact, because Weymouth, Portland, has a geological feature, and that's Portland stone. It was the quarrying of that brought the railways. This here, it's wonderful Weymouth station, has actually been restored since I think I did a video here, was it a year, 18 months ago. The canopy's all been restored here, and you have trains here that go from here to London Waterloo, so that's electric train, so it's third rail here, so that's South Western Railway, takes you up to London Waterloo, and the train here is the one that's going to be heading back in the Gloucester direction, so that's GWR, which you'll be familiar with from my channel. So that'll be heading back up towards Bristol direction via Westbury, Bristol and Gloucester. So yeah, trains to Bristol and Gloucester, trains over there, electric ones to London Waterloo. But we need to make our way out of the station so I can tell you some more. I do apologise for the blotchy pitch at the moment because it is coming down quite heavily with rain. It's supposed to be dry today, but got rain here today. So this is the car park for Weymouth railway station, or one of them, and that's our tracks over on that side. But here you have some more tracks. I don't know if you can see that down there. And this, just up there, was the junction of where our railway story starts, because there was a station just up there called Melcombe Regis. This part of Weymouth is called Melcombe Regis. There was another railway line, which is the one that went down to Weymouth Quay. That's not part of our story today. That's probably going to be for another time. There are lots of videos on that. But this divided away from here, still got part of the tracks here. So I'm near this, I think it's a B&Q warehouse shed, one of those DIY places. There is actually a level crossing here, but this is now mainly used for storage for trains, occasionally, not very often. The lines are quite rusted and haven't been used for a little while, I don't think. But we're making our way outside the station this way rather than the main entrance this time. And well, there is a signal there as well, so I think that's still connected. We'll have a look at that first, and then I'll tell you some more about the complicated history of the railway lines to the island of Portland here in Dorset. Yeah, so this is our level crossing in effect here. The lines do continue there. Don't know if you can see that there, so they go carry on in the road. And the signal there, there's a bit of a greenery there just covering it up, but it is still marked as being on. So I need to make our way over to Radipole Lake though to tell you our story about the railway line here towards the island of Portland, and we will be following it all the way. So I'm going to be walking to the island of Portland to where Portland station once was, and then catching the train back to Weymouth. So this is the Swannery car park, and it was at this site there was once a station called Melcombe Regis, and it became important later on as our story develops. But I first need to tell you about the first railway on the island of Portland before I can explain about the others. Now this was a tramway, it was a horse-drawn tramway with an inclined plane which was roped. It's one of those counterbalance ones, so you have one up, one down, counterbalance rope, which we have mentioned on the channel before. It wasn't connected to any other railways, it was completely self-contained. But it was to transport the rock from Portland, the stone, and to take it to the quayside there from the quarries, which are higher up on the island of Portland, and take them down to the quay so that stone could then be transported off the island via boat or ship. As I say, it was completely unconnected, so we just have that working in isolation. That ran up on and off because it was a little bit unreliable until 1939, until the start of the Second World War. It did carry passengers to some extent, but not to a great extent, and it had lots of reliabilities, and one of the reasons why it had those reliability issues was because the rope kept breaking on the tramway with those inclined planes. Just in front of us though, we have Radipole Lake, and our railway, our second railway, which is the one we're going to be mainly featuring in our video today, originally had a viaduct over the lake. It was a wooden affair, so it was coming out of here, so we had our junction there, so it was to the north of the present day Weymouth railway station where it branched off. And this railway was built by the GWR to connect Portland to the mainland, and it was connected up to the line that I've travelled down on today, which is now called the Heart of the Wessex Line. By doing so and keeping the station at Melcombe Regis here, it acted as an additional station for Weymouth town. When the Victorians brought their railway down both from London and from the Bristol direction, it boosted tourism in the town, and it became very, very popular, and often Weymouth station became very, very busy, particularly in the summer months. So Melcombe Regis acts as like an overflow station. And of course the line closed at Portland, but when the line closed to Portland, Melcombe Regis station carried on for a few years, continuing to act as an overflow for excursion trains down to the resort here at Weymouth in Dorset. So you're now looking at both Radipole Lake and Swannery Road Bridge. Not quite sure when the road bridge was built, but it was around this site there was once a viaduct carrying our railway, which is our second railway to the island of Portland, which opened by the GWR in 1865, primarily for freight, but also to look at doing passenger trips as well to Portland and to serving the needs of the local people who lived on the Isle of Portland. So it went across here on a rudimentary wooden viaduct. I'll see if I can insert a photograph of that now, but I think it was demolished around about the early 1970s, and I think the new road replacement was built shortly afterward here. But yes, Radipole Lake was, or rather is, an RSPP nature reserve. So we're going to make our way over that bridge and follow the line of the Portland Railway, the second one, so that was opened in 1864, and follow what is known as the Rodwell Green Route, which was turned into a walkway and cycleway in 2000. And according to my notes, there should be lots for us to see at the former railway along the way. So like it says there, welcome to the Rodwell Trail, from rail to trail, 1865 to 1965. So the trail itself is just over 2 miles long, but the railway was longer than that. It gets a little bit more complicated, as I'll explain as we go. So just looking at the map, there's railway Weymouth station. In fact, Melcombe Regis is where the railway started. It's just a little bit further up off here where that car park was. That's the separate car park, that's the Swannery car park. This is the Swannery Bridge, which is where the original viaduct would have been. and we're here. We're at Westham Holt. Got lots of other stations to see on the way. Talk more about that as we get there. So let's have a look at Westham Holt. There's a nice plaque here. Rodwell Trail opened 2000. Special award for contribution to the environment. Weymouth Civic Society. And there's some nice little carvings there. I think it says, not sure what, HM Coast Guard. There's one on the left. The one in the middle is the RNLI. I think that's just a fisherman on the right. So the start of our trail, yes, 0 metres. Of course, that doesn't signify the railway start because that was back there at Melcombe Regis. A lovely little plaque there of a robin. But this is the platform. Nice little painting here, the back of Westham Holt. Don't know how accurate that would have been. I'm assuming that would have been the viaduct that went over Radipole Lake. And so it's got a southern locomotive there, 177. And here is the platform at Westham Holt. Not sure exactly when this halt opens. As I say, the railway opened in 1865. It's potentially opened a little bit later, I do believe. The service changed somewhat around 1900, however, as I'll explain. So this is our platform edge running along here, and for a halt it's actually a very, very long platform indeed. But it's hard to work out just how much of this is original. I certainly doubt it was original in 1865. Now, as well as Portland stone, the other thing that Portland is famous, of course, is the Admiralty, the Navy. And in 1842, a new breakwater started to be under construction. Portland is the only place between Portsmouth and Plymouth which is suitable to have a major harbour for the Navy. And that's why it was so important to build this breakwater to provide new protection and to expand the harbour facilities. When it opened in 1862, the railway company and the military thought it'd be a good idea for this new harbour outlet for the Navy to be rail served. So that's our third railway that came in, off from Portland, where the site of Portland Station was, serving the new breakwater and extended harbour on the Isle of Portland. Unfortunately, a lot of that is still owned by the military, so it's very difficult to explore part of it, although there are still lots of remains on it. It will be outside of the scope of what we can cover on our little video here today, though. But I'll insert a map now so you can see the route of where the line left the main bit at Portland, extending right by into the Admiralty's land there. As I say, there's also a large prison there, so it makes it very, very difficult for me to explore that particular area. So we're now going over a bridge which was put in when the Rodwell Trail was opened in 2000. This is the bridge here, which is of course replacing an earlier bridge which carried the railway over this road. I don't know the name of this road though, but it's a minor road serving a suburb just outside Old Harbour South here in Weymouth. Anyway, our journey continues along the old railway line, making our way to Rodwell, where I understand there is both a tunnel and remains of the former station on this line towards the Isle of Portland. Now this here has nothing to do with our railway, although it was built right next to our railway, and it was an anti-aircraft gun emplacement built during the Second World War, literally, well, just a few metres away from where the railway track would have been going down to Portland. So this is the Rodwell Tunnel, and just beyond it there is Rodwell Station, which we'll just have a look at now. So these are the former platforms here at Rodwell station, one there under my feet and one on just the other side there, the other side of the trail. That's our tunnel back there. In fact, I was surprised to see that it's double track throughout the tunnel and also having two platforms of what would have been a fairly lightly used railway. Now I think after 1900 there were 8 trains a day, only 4 on a Sunday, and it was cut back because, well, they wouldn't really use very much on Sundays, I guess. But it was expanded later on after Portland, when I say 1900, because this is when our 4th railway comes into play. It's good to see that the platform is actually in great condition. Indeed, on both platforms, on both sides of the tracks here. Well, not tracks, obviously, cycleway and footpath, but would have been railway tracks. You've got to imagine there was railway tracks here with the ballast and everything running right through it, but difficult to imagine that now. With cyclists speeding along, you do have to be careful walking along here because they do hurtle through, making the most of it being flat, dead and straight. I'm not sure, perhaps you can help me out here, if these coping slabs are original or not, or whether they were done when this whole thing was reopened for the public in the year 2000. Are they original or not? There we go, let's have a closer up look. Perhaps you can tell me. I don't know. I wouldn't like to say either way, but the rest of it, on this side you've got brickwork, so they're made up of 2 different constructions on either side. So we've got red and blue bricks in there, if we can just see that. And on this side it's different. It looks like some kind of amalgamation between concrete and the aforementioned Portland stone. So it's a very odd construction. Looks like they were done on 2 different dates. I'm guessing that one on this side was opened later than the platform on that side, but my notes can't really help me out because they don't really say. The platforms are also both very, very long again, much longer than you would expect from what would have been a lightly used railway down to the island of Portland. And again, if you know why the platforms were made so long, please let me know. So back there we just have another one of those markers there, 1,500 metres, 1.5k, so right about the 1 mile mark after we started our journey outside the town of Weymouth. Most delightful and pleasant walk, even though it's still dripping with rain, even though it is rather light rain. Sorry if it's splodges on the camera, I do apologise for that, but hopefully it will ease off as we get onto the island. So there are places you can stop and eat and drink en route, including this pub here, the Old Castle, which according to the sign has a large beer garden. Now this here is a bit of a miraculous survivor. It's all that remains of Sandsfoot Halt, built to serve the needs of the tourist visiting the nearby Sandsfoot Castle. Unfortunately I won't have time to visit that today because I'll be catching the bus to make a video in the centre of Weymouth later on, but I will be back to this area. Perhaps we can have a look at it another time. But yeah, it's good to see that it's been completely still here. You can actually make out how it was originally built down here. They actually improvised and used some of the sleepers that were redundant from the track to build this tiny little halt, which is in comparison to the huge length of platforms we saw earlier at Rodwell. Now at this point here we're joined by the southwest coast path as it makes its way towards Portland. (2,000-metre point since leaving, 2 kilometres from the start, and there, King Henry VIII, and the reason for that is he had connections to Sandsfoot Castle. So this is Castle Cove Sailing Club, and I'll just be able to pan it round. You can just make out Sandsfoot Castle. I'll just point to where it is. It's just there. So that's where Sandsfoot Castle is, just here in this lovely cove, which is an ideal sailing spot. And actually now you can start to see the Portland breakwater, which is extending right across. No, there. There we go. And that, of course, that being built meant that there was potential to expand the railway, the third railway. We still haven't talked about the fourth one yet. We'll do that shortly. And there you can see the hill. And it was at the top of the hill on Portland. This is Portland Island here, connected by a little isthmus of land here, which is, of course, Chesil Beach. And we'll be following that. So we join up to it, make our way up to Fortune's Well. And then, if I've got time, we'll be heading to another place, which is where our fourth railway went to. So we've now reached the village of Wyke Regis, which is, for all intents and purposes these days, is now merely a suburb of Weymouth, but it was once its own village. Now you can see large post-war housing developments over there. It had its own station though, which I can't help thinking would have been rather useful these days to cut down on car usage, but of course all these things came to an end. The line itself though actually shut down in the 1950s. It wasn't a beaching one, it was because it wasn't really used. Obviously the population in those days was a lot less and people travelled a lot less as well. And it was at 1965 the whole lot shut down, but that was, of course, was the freight serving the various quarries on the island of Portland. I'm not sure if any of them still survive these days. I know there are some, one or two around Dorset that still do, particularly around Studland area, that part of Dorset. And oh yes, we have another marker here, 2,500 metres, 2.5k, and it's a Royal National Lifeboat Institution lifeboat on it there on the panel, which is good to see. Some wonderful flowers here, cornflowers on both sides of our trail. And here's our next station, Wyke Regis. You can just make out some concrete edges there. I think there must have been some infilling in this part here when they did the Rodwell trail, so this is at a higher level than what the track bed would have been, of course. Not entirely sure the reason for that. It might be because it gives better access to some of the footpaths that are joining the trail, both to the left and the right of me though, but you can definitely make out the platform both sides. It looks like it was single track at this point though. So this is our 3,000 metre, 3 kilometre marker here, so just over 2 miles. I think it's 2.2 miles. So this marks the end of the Rodwell Trail. It's not the end of our video though. We're going to make our way across, of course, to the Isle of Portland. See if I can see, well, there's no evidence of the railway station at Portland. In fact, there was 2 stations at Portland, and that ties in nicely with the fourth railway. So the first one opened when the second railway was put in, and then of course there was a whole complex of railways around there then, which tied in with the opening of the Portland breakwater and that whole complex there to serve both the Admiralty and the various quarries in that area. So it was then moved, they rebuilt the station a little bit further to the south. Now this bit here is quite interesting. So we've got, it kind of diverges, if you like. So we're not on the Rodwell trail anymore. The tarmac there is to serve the needs of this newer housing development here at Wyke Regis. But the bit I'm walking on, you can see that there, is still a bit ballasty, giving us evidence of what was here before. Anyway, let's go along. I think there's an interpretive board up here as well, so we'll certainly go and have a look at that as well. Sorry, it's a little bit murky today, but we're looking across to Portland. In the middle of the screen there, well, you'd be able to see it if it wasn't such a murky day, is Portland Castle, which was built in 1539, the same year that Sandsfoot Castle was built, which I showed earlier in the video. It was one of a chain of artillery forts built for Henry VIII to protect the south coast from the threat of invasion by the French and Spanish, following Henry's break from the Catholic Church, yes, the Reformation. To the right of that, though, is the Sailing Academy, which was extended and rebuilt for the Olympic and Paralympic Games, which were held right here in 2012. Okay, so what you're looking at now is where there was once a viaduct which carried our railway over, well, this little inlet here, and also what is known as the Fleet, which is the tidal bit of water which lies between Chesil Beach and the sea. You can actually just make out part of one of the supports of the viaducts here, so we'll just have a walk up to that. And so yes, so it would have been built when our railway was constructed. So the railway opened 1865, so construction of this viaduct would have started probably a few years before that. So you can see it there, and there's another one just there. So that's our supports for the viaduct. So it went right across there to where those boats are there on the other side, just there. So yeah, the line closed in 1965 for freight, or completely, and it was demolished just a few years later in 1971, I do believe. Anyway, so this is the end of our trail, so we need to follow the path in front of that housing over there and join the main road following Chesil Beach that way. Well, welcome to Portland. This is the Fleet, and this is the new ferry bridge we're about to cross now. Not sure when it was built though. If I can find out, well, you know what I do. So we're now heading on to what is known as Portland Commons, part of the Crown Estate. And we're going to follow it along here, so along the road, which is a narrow strip of land, as I say, joining up to Portland proper. And it looks like our railway to Portland actually went on that embankment above this common meadowland here. See if we can make our way up there. This is the course of our railway, heading this way. There's a concrete plinth there. Was that the site of, I dare say, I want to say signal box, but I'm not sure. Do you know? Drop a comment below if you do. If I can find out, I'll stick a subtitle up. I'm not entirely sure. And so there is the bank of Chesil Beach, and the building just coming up on the left of your screen is the Wild Chesil Centre, which tells you more about the nature and geology of this important site. Now, the path I'm currently walking on, as well as being the Southwest Coast Path, well, I don't need to say any more about that, I'm sure you all know the Southwest Coast Path, it's also the Hardy Way. Now, the Hardy Way also goes over another part of it, former Lost Railway. Now, when I was coming into Weymouth, the stop before, the station before, isn't Dorchester West, which is the one before that, but Upway. And at Upway, one time, there was a junction there from Upway going to a village here in Dorset, and that village is Abbotsbury, which you can also walk to along the Southwest Coast Path in that direction. Well, Chesil Beach off that way. And from Upway, or just after Upway, the Hardy Way also joins up with that former railway line between Upway and Abbotsbury. My YouTube pal Louise from Southwest Sundays recently did a video at Abbotsbury, so if you want to have a look at what Abbotsbury is like, I'll link to her video at the end of this one as well. Also tell you, I've just added a couple of extra playlists. This will be in my railway series playlist, of course. I think there's about 90 videos in there now, so they're all different things. They're not just lost railway walks, also looking at heritage lines and new railway stations as well. We've had a couple of those, and there'll be another one coming up later in this year in Bristol. I've added a new playlist for the county of Wiltshire and another new playlist looking at nothing to do with railways but photography. So if photography is your thing, videos I've done on photography you'll find in that new playlist there. Our fourth railway, remember, just to recap, we had the original tramway which wasn't connected to anything else, the line from the main line Weymouth to here at Portland. The third one was when the breakwater opened, which was around 1860s after this section. And then there was another railway line which was commissioned by an Act of Parliament in 1867, and it was called the Eastern and Church Hope Railway. It was its own complete separate railway. But it didn't actually open until 1900. In fact, the plans of the route of this railway, which were mainly to serve the needs of the quarries again on Portland in the eastern area. Eastern is like a settlement in the centre of the island of Portland. I'll put a map in now so you can see where Eastern is. That opened in 1900, complete all the way through. So then it enabled the GWR and the London and South Western Railway, WSR, to run services to Eastern as well. So throughout, so you had trains not only serving Portland, which is the first settlement on the island, but also to Eastern as well. Now, I'm hoping to look at section of that. We'll start it in reverse order, so I won't actually be walking the route of the railway because, of course, beyond Portland here, you can't get round. But it does join up with the South West Coast Path later on, but I'm hoping to start it in Eastern first, to see if we can see the site where the station was. The station building is no longer there. I'm led to believe it is now a care home, a nursing home built on the site, but we'll have a look to see where it was and follow it back out to where it joins the South West Coast Path, because it goes on a curve around the coast and it's like built up like on a ledge above the coast, so it sounds rather dramatic. So I would like to see that, but it will, bear in mind, when we do that bit, it will be in reverse order, in reverse formation, to quote railway terminology, and we'll have a look at that. But again, I'll put some maps in so you can see that. So yeah, the Eastern and Church Hope Railway, which was a separate company, although the trains that ran on it were both an amalgamation of the Great Western Railway and London and South Western Railway. So it's a bit of a strange arrangement. Now, the Eastern and Church Hope Railway was not as profitable as they had envisaged it would have been. There wasn't so much freight carried on it from the quarries in that area as what had been carried from Portland itself. So all this struggled financially. And in fact, it closed again in the 1950s. It actually went bankrupt. So although the services were run by two other separate bigger companies, the whole thing went completely kaput because the Eastern and Church Hope Railway, they ran the infrastructure, a bit like Network Rail. Obviously that's a public company now, it's state owned. They were a private company, a small private company indeed, running the infrastructure, the actual rails, the points and the signalling and all of that. So they had the cost of all that to bear, but little income for it, so it struggled and went bankrupt. So we're on Portland proper. This is a new road here called Ham Beach Road, coming into this roundabout through traffic down to Portland Bill A354. And this area around here roughly was where the first Portland railway station is, or was, should I say. I'll see if I can throw up some maps so we can define it a bit more precisely. So that building there, nothing to do with railways, is the National Sailing Academy. I believe that was built for the 2012 Olympics, back 12 years ago now. Now, there was once a whole network of railways to serve the needs of the military and the quarries in this area, but it's all been completely redeveloped to serve the needs of the sailing community now and other people that are boating in the harbour, people using the water in there, because it's a nice sheltered harbour, so you can understand that. So there's nothing to see in this area. However, I'm walking towards Portland Castle, and from there should be an incline. Yes, you guessed it. That was our first railway, I think. I'm not 100% certain, but I think that's the location of our first railway I spoke about right at the beginning of today's video. Well, I think that's probably a first for the channel. It's certainly a first for me. I've never seen a boat multi-storey car park before. What an amazing sight! And just in front of that multi-storey car park for boats, we have the Royal Navy's HMS Osprey helicopter. So this is a Westland Lynx HAS helicopter, and it was based here because there used to be an RNAS, the Royal Naval Air Station, here at Portland. That closed in 1999 to be transferred to Yeovilton, near the town of Yeovil in Somerset. There's another RNAS station in the area that I cover, and that's at Culdrose, near the town of Helston on the Lizard in Cornwall. And there's a plaque here dedicated to Danny the Dolphin, who often came into the harbour here at Portland, very similar to the one. Remember that seal that came into the harbour at Loo, also in Cornwall. There's a large cargo ship there. This pronunciation is probably completely wrong, but it's something like Wujine Barindes, which looks to me either Dutch or Afrikaans, so either from the Netherlands or South Africa. And this here is the helipad for heli operations, with their hangar there, now in the centre of the screen. So we've now arrived at Portland Castle, which I spoke about earlier in the video when we were at Wyke Regis, back there on the mainland. So what was originally a small harbour here on Portland was taken over by HM government in 1865. It wasn't the most ambitious engineering schemes that the government had ever undertaken at its time. Obviously the completion of that breakwater was an important part of that story, and our railway was too, serving the needs of the Navy by bringing in fuel and also troops here to the island by rail. Here we have a railway feature. So our original railway, or rather the second one, would have gone under the road here. This is Castle Road. It's good to see it hasn't been completely infilled, so you can make out the fantastic engineering and masonry work to have built the railway on the island here of Portland in Dorset. So this is the start of our incline tramway, though I mentioned at the beginning of the video, our first railway. So there, Jordan's Quarry, I think that just means where that piece of Portland stone came from, and you can see another one there saying Broadcroft Quarry. And a legacy trail, so we're going to head up this way, which I think is the start of our incline. It certainly looks like it's going uphill to Fortune's Well. Sorry if it's green, it's very, very dark under here. So we've got this bridge over our route of our tramway, but I really don't think that was there originally. Yeah, so that's a newer bridge carrying a road. There is like a development. There's a new apartment and also a derelict building, which I think once belonged to the Admiralty. Yes, unlike our Rodwell trail leading out of Weymouth towards Wyke Regis, this one is a lot more difficult to find. It's not marked. Certainly no finger posts directing you to it, and it's hidden between a newer building and a derelict one. But it's certainly the route of our former tramway, our railway number 1 here on Portland, which started the whole thing in the 1820s. And like we've seen on the tramway in South Gloucestershire, looks like there we have some stone sets just running along the edge of the path here. It's good to see and confirms our route. And here they're running on this side. I think it was a 4-foot gauge, so quite a wide gauge for a tramway, but not quite standard gauge, so a wider but not so wide for a tramway, if that makes sense. And the line of it is certainly very clear here. I've seen other YouTube videos on railways in Portland, but I don't remember seeing them covered. Certainly not this section, so that's interesting to see. And here we have a newer bridge going over a lot older, some 200 years old tramway here on Portland. To protect the integrity of the route, this is a bridge that's been rebuilt, but there probably would have been one here originally. But it's good to see they haven't built over it or filled in the route of our railway number 1 here on Portland. As you can see, we've now climbed a lot in height, and that's the town of Fortuneswell, which is where I was a little bit before. This is my second video I've done here on West Country Wanderings on Portland. The first one wasn't a railway one, it was just a general look around part of the island. We still have lots more to explore, so there will definitely be another one from Portland at a future point. Power sign there says T&T. Does that mean tea and toast? Sounds good, doesn't it? That carries on that way, and I think it goes on to a place called the Verne, but we're not making our way to that because I want to go to Easton. So I'm going to go through that way, through the Kissing Gate, and join the road. So I'll see you over there in a bit. Well, hello again. I'm just following this footpath to join the road to get to Easton. But it's still got some sets here. I'm just wondering if our tramway actually divided to serve a number of quarries at the top of Fortuneswell. It seems very likely. Now, unfortunately, the weather has taken a very nasty turn. Although it's forecast sunshine today, we haven't seen any of that. So I think I'm going to wrap things up. But before I do, I was following that path. I came through housing estate, and before I got to the top where there's like a fantastic view looking down at the harbour, I found not one but 2 bridges over our former tramway. Now, did these bridges carry remnants of the railway line, our railway line number 2? I'm not entirely sure. I'll need to do some research and put some information on the screen, but amazing sight. Well, I'm sorry I've had to cut the video a bit shorter than I would have liked. I was hoping to walk to Easton and get you some shots looking at Easton and where the railway track curves round by the sea, but sadly the rain is just getting heavier and heavier and heavier, and I feel a bit uncomfortable with my camera being out because it's not a waterproof one and it's just getting too wet, so I'm going to have to dry it off now under this bridge. I'm dry here and put it back away in my rucksack and then catch the bus. Did I say train earlier? I think I might have said train at the beginning of the video. Catch the bus back to Weymouth to catch my train home. Yes, it'd be nice to catch a train still, but obviously, as you've seen, the line closed, well, back in 1965. I hope you've enjoyed the wander today on the island of Portland in the wonderful county of Dorset. We will be back on Portland again soon to continue our railway adventures here, and also to have a look further down the island towards Portland, the Bill even again. Thank you very much for watching West Country Wanderings today. Hope to see you on the channel again very soon. All the best for now. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye.